welcome to week 3 and our final discussion small group week of the Project 25 series. We've been exploring this idea about meeting needs in love. We talked in week 1 about noticing needs, and in week 2 about taking it a step further and actually meeting the need that you notice. And today I want to explore the idea of being contagious, or being a contagious person in a positive way. In our culture today, it's contagious is not a word that we take lightly. With H1N1 virus and just all the things that we have become a very germ conscious people. I know for me personally, I have definitely become more aware of what I touch, as far as public places and door handles and things like that, and become more conscious. And you just notice things when other people don't have good germ habits or good control habits of when they cough and they don't put their elbow into their mouth, and you notice things like that. And I look around our church and public places, and there are all these little dispenser things with the alcohol-based hand cleanser, hand sanitizer to try and keep the germs down. Schools are very on high alert with this. It can become a very dangerous situation for us also. That has raised our awareness of what it means to be contagious. But I wonder how much of our awareness is raised about how we are contagious to other people. So the truth is, all of us are contagious in some ways. Some of us are more than others. Some of us are less than others. We all have this power of influence. And some people have a lot of influence, and they're leaders in the circles that they run in. And when a decision needs to be made in the group that they're in, they're the ones that look to make the decision. Some people are more followers, and they just kind of sit back and observe. But the truth is that we are all influencers, and we are all contagious at some level. The question is what are we conveying to other people? What are you going to catch if you're around us? How are we contagious, and what are we carrying with us? This is the idea that I think Jesus was exploring and trying to convince the Pharisees of his day in a dialogue that he had in the Scripture. And the Pharisees of the day were the religious leaders. They were the ones who everyone looked up to. They had 614 laws to help them to abide by the 10 commandments that God had set. I think their motives were really good, but as happens to a lot of things, that you start out with good motives, but then you get caught up, and they got caught up in money and power and influence and being publicly seen, and they really desired to have people to notice them in the streets and in the marketplace as rulers and as authority figures, and they wanted the best seats in the synagogue, and they were very critical of other people and how they dealt with their money. They were very critical of how people worshipped, and all these different things, and they had made it a very outward-looking process. And one time, a bunch of these guys invited Jesus to have a meal with him, and so he walks in and he sits down with them, and he doesn't wash his hands before he eats. Now, for you and me, we see that, we're kind of like, that's gross, dude. You should wash your hands. But as long as they're not going to be feeding us or touching the food that we're going to be eating, it's not that big of a deal. But for these guys, it's a huge deal, because they had this elaborate ceremonially washing system so that they would be clean, because they were very, very aware that they wanted to be what's called ceremonially clean, so that they could partake in communion, and they could have sacrifices, and they could have contact and interaction with God. Very important thing to them. So they had these crazy ways about them to make sure that they were not unclean when it came to relating to God. But this is one of the things, is that before you sat down, you went through this process of washing your hands. Well, Jesus just walks into their room, and he just sits down by the table, and he reclines back, and he prepares to eat. And one of the guys like, Jesus, you didn't wash your hands. And then Jesus sees this as an opportunity, and he just kind of lets loose on these guys. And he's like, you guys are so concerned about the outside, but you have no idea what's going on the inside. You're so messed up. You've got everything just right on the outside, and to everyone it looks great, but on the inside you are just wasting away. And he talks to them about their tithing and about the way they live, and he uses these metaphors, and you'll get into this in your small group. But he uses these ideas, and then he gets this one thing that's really interesting, and he says, you're like an unmarked grave, and people walk over you, and they don't even know it. For us, it was kind of like, what's the big deal? You stepped on an unmarked grave. I mean, you wouldn't even know it. But for these guys, for the Jews, it would have been a huge deal in their life, because this would have meant that they were ceremonially unclean. And they would have to go through, this elaborate process in order for them to be able to communicate and to relate to God and to be able to operate in the temple. So it was a huge deal for them. But Jesus, the point he's making is like, you guys are leading people astray. You are making people unclean on the inside, and they don't even know it. They're following you, and they're wanting to be just like you. They want to be rich. They want to be powerful. They want to be influential. They want to be known in the streets. They want to have the best seats in the synagogue. They want all these things for themselves. And what that's done is taken them away from what's most important, and that is taking care of the inside. And the inside is really what people will catch when they're around you. Because you've been around enough people, and you see them on the surface, everything looks great. And you get to know them, you're like, wow, they've really got some stuff going on. Or maybe they don't look so much on the outside, and they've got long hair, they've got, they're dirty or whatever. And you get to know them, and you're like, wow, this is a really interesting person. This person's very deep, they're spiritual, they understand, they have a love for God and a love for people. And the outside is a surface thing. It may work for first impressions, but as we get deeper into relationships and we begin to see who people really are, it's the inside that becomes contagious. So this week, I hope that you will focus in and take a real hard look at what it is that you're doing to the outside, but more importantly, what are you doing to make sure that the inside is clean? Because the inside is what will be contagious to others. Enjoy your small group, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.